I'm Nicola Talent, and you're listening to Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs, and the sins of the underworld. We're Ireland's top podcast for 2025, and now we've got a new website. So if you want to learn more about crime and criminals, if you want stories, extras, and podcast subscriber specials, go to www.crimeworld.com. Do you want to admit what just happened? Anybody?
It's humiliating, is it?
Well, I really do think it is humiliating. But in fairness, you haven't been humiliated in about a month and a half.
Well, you don't know because you haven't been listening. So I could well have humiliated myself.
Not to this extent, I would guarantee you. So you can just tell everyone what happened.
An unfortunate incident, let's put it that way, where I snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
You arrived in to the sort of we call it our Nth room or something like that?
Recreational room area.
Where there's a pool table, and you kind of swaggered in and picked up a pool cue and decided you were going to play a game, and I said, I'll play.
Yeah. Then you got cocky.
Well, I got two in
one go.
Which was skill.
Skill, yes.
And a misspent youth.
And then you got absolutely slaughtered until I got on the black.
Yeah.
You told me then, I felt sorry for you, so I set you up here.
Yeah.
And then I potted the black, proceeded directly by the white going in.
Okay, it's not quite true. But I did win, actually.
You did win.
Yeah.
You did win. Anyway. So it's good to be humiliated. I really miss that.
Anyone watching can see the absolute smugness of my grin. Those of you listening were just going to have to imagine it, but it is so smug,
self-satisfied.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's unjustifiably self-satisfied because it wasn't really due to your own skill. It was more due to my
I'm actually
chronic failure.
Not a bad pool player.
If you do say so,
nobody will challenge it.
If you do say so yourself.
Now, tell me about one of my favourite ladies of the underworld.
Though, of course, she may argue she's not a lady of the underworld, but she's certainly associated with one of the dominant figures
of the underworld.
Yeah,
she was well married to him, I can tell you, Fat Andy Connors.
Fat Andy Connors and his widow, Anne, who, of course, has graced the media for various reasons. And she has, of course, come before the courts herself. But also she's been the focus of a long running investigation by CAB where her family's assets have been seized. But yeah, she was... you
could write a book on Anne Connors.
Could write a book on Anne Connors.
I'm just telling you that much now.
So she has a tradition, I suppose, and the family do, where they go to his graveside every Christmas, and they post pictures. They get dressed up, or she gets dressed up and posts a tribute to her husband, Fat Andy, who of course was murdered in 2014 in her arms. Pretty
much a cold case murder now, because there was one arrest in connection with that murder, which happened around the time that there was a lot of dispute in the area. Of course, the house being in Saggart in County Dublin, and there was a lot of dispute at the time. Andy Connors would have been the banker to Gangland as well as other things, and he often loaned money or invested money for people. And there was a lot of dispute over money he said he had invested, which he was owed back, which he was being told he wasn't. It was at the time that the Mansfield Empire had gone under, and that there was a lot of activity, a lot of kind of underworld figures and gangland figures were kind of swirling the remains of the Mansfield Empire, claiming that they had invested money and wanted it back. Of course, the late Jim Mansfield Sr. had indeed profited from both clean and dirty money, and when his entire wealth went into essentially a debt after the crash, he had difficulty sorting one from the other, because a lot of the investors that had bought properties around the area had bought them with dirty money, and sometimes their names hadn't been put on the property, but they all had gone into the kind of the slush fund of the financial ruin of his empire.
And of course, you heard the working out of that when a house was seized. Was it last year by CAB, which had been owned by Daniel Kinahan and Thomas Bomber Kavanagh, that had been registered in a different name by the Mansfield. So,
Yeah.
but
And
yeah,
that was due to an investment. They had arrived. I mean, the detail of that case, which was given out in court at the time, and from when it opened, was that money had arrived at the Mansfield property in Tasaggart House in suitcases.
yeah, I think
Suitcases of cash to pay for properties, and they hadn't got into their names or something like this.
Yeah.
And basically they had used this luxury mansion in Coldwater Lakes to pay back what was owed.
Yeah. So Anne Connors appeared at his graveside, and she posted up publicly available, saying a tribute to Fat Andy Connors, saying, "What a life we would have had if you were alive, and I love you and miss my beautiful husband."
Right.
Yeah. Now, like Anne Connors, of course, would have witnessed the murder. Very, very shocking. To see somebody gunned down in your arms, and of course, it is, as you said, almost a cold case in that it's one of those murky gangland murders where a lot of names were put forward. That a hitman had been hired. There was, rumours of INLA involvement, or, gunmen associated with the INLA taking out a hit. And obviously there was this big overarching dispute about who got that ever-shrieking piece of the pie that was left.
Shrinking, yeah. Look, I mean, I've had a couple of conversations with Anne Connors over the years, mainly after her husband's death in 2014. Number of occasions I did approach her to ask her, was she interested in, doing any appeals in relation to that. The Connors family haven't done that. I don't think they engage with either police or media.
Yeah, I mean, Anne Connors'
thing. I don't think it's anything to do with not wanting the murder solved or accepting that that's the way it is. They just don't. That's not their thing. But I have to say, what stand out for me is the fact that Anne Connors also calls her husband Fat Andy.
Yeah.
I was expecting that the fat bit was used by those, but obviously it has been something that he wore with pride. And in actual fact, on his grave in Gorey in County Wexford is the epithet to him, Big Fat Rich Andy Connors.
Yeah, because he was also called Rich Andy Connors by in the community. And of course it was probably one of those, the first really incredible sort of funerals of a gangland figure, and probably made famous because he was buried in a gold coffin when he was lowered into the ground, and
€100,000 Rolex watch said to be on his arm.
Yeah.
And various other things like that. There was a kind of a thing to that display of wealth that, of course, had brought the wrath of the Criminal Assets Bureau to the Connors door a number of times when Andy Connors was alive. There was a revenue case brought because they owned a series of properties and had never kind of had legitimate earnings. Andy Connors, as Eamon has very articulately told us, was headed up a burglary gang that went around the country. They were prolific. There was a number of different police operations against them, but they would hit a certain area and go in and rob houses. They had an eye for fine art, for antiques, for jewellery, and they cleaned up on that. And with the money he earned, he then subsequently became the banker into gangland. He'd loan money at high rate interest. Bought up properties, travelled in very high-end cars, lavished his family with gifts, and was very tragically, no matter what his life was, shot dead in front of not only his wife Anne, but also their young children at the time in their home. She has managed to stay put ever since. I mean, you're talking 12 years now. She's still on the property where he was killed. She sometimes lives within the property, sometimes lives in a caravan out the back. There's been some move by the Criminal Assets Bureau to sell up some of the properties, and she's been hit with a second set of Criminal Assets Bureau procedures.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these really, really long-running cases, and a judgment was received against his estate by the Criminal Assets Bureau, and a number of properties have now been sold off, including one, I think, called the Villa in Tala. I mean, a huge property that had lain empty for over a decade by the time it was sold. But I think the bill at one stage was 2.7 million, probably almost an unachievable amount, even if the assets were disposed of. Obviously that was the bill that was put on it and worked out in relation to the tax. So she has continued to kind of, I suppose, tried to earn a living, and some of those ways in which she's attempted to earn cash have also got her.
I don't honestly think that we need to say earn, because I don't think she's ever earned a living. She has been caught and, accused of robberies herself, house burglary herself.
Yeah, though she was ultimately acquitted of that
Right.
after coming to court. She was at one point found in a car and charges were brought against her, but it didn't amount to anything. But she was convicted late last year of theft, really, to do with social welfare payments. One of them, it was actually a PUP payment from the pandemic.
How did she get that?
Well, I don't know, but she obviously didn't get it legitimately, because ultimately she was given a 2-year suspended sentence and had pled guilty. So, look, I suppose, there was many people who somehow managed to get their hands on those payments. And you weren't talking a huge amount of money. I think it was 7,000 in total, which was ultimately repaid. But she was convicted of a charge of deception, which was obviously, getting a payment by fraudulent means. And even when she received that sentence, the judge noted that one of the mitigating factors were her personal circumstances, in particular the death of her husband, who died in tragic circumstances. So she also ran into trouble on a story you wrote about, where she had a kind of, would you call it a caravan park, or an unofficial caravan park, I suppose, at the back of one of the properties, where she was renting out mobile homes, I think, to rent.
It was the property where he was shot dead, and
Right.
There was also, she sort of, or there had been a claim laid to land beside it, which was Mansfield property, but which I think she was trying to move on to. Again, there had been this dispute with her late husband and Jim Mansfield Senior about what was owed to him, but she had created a series of sort of mobile homes down the back, which of course runs on to Coldwater Lakes.
Yeah.
Maybe not describing this place properly. Coldwater Lakes was this very exclusive development built by the Mansfields, kind of for the Mansfields.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the sons had a house on it. Jimmy Mansfield Jr. had a huge big mansion on it, which he later sold to Christina Gallagher of the House of Prayer. PJ Mansfield had a house on it, and actually the Mansfield's wife also lived on Coldwater Lakes. But they're very exclusive houses, kind of, detached mansions pretty much.
Yeah.
And the grounds of Coldwater Lakes, which are gated and, private, were designed as a golf course by O'Connor.
Yeah, Christy O'Connor.
Christy
Jr.,
O'Connor. Who weirdly, his name at some point shows up on the, the deeds of this house that turned out to be Daniel Kinahan's and Bomber Kavanagh. I mean, you couldn't write it. It was just such a mess.
And obviously
but
Christy
the
O'Connor
Connors' land comes right down onto Coldwater Lakes.
Yeah.
So what was happening was, there was residents in Coldwater Lakes who'd spent a lot of money on their homes, were very proud of these mansions they lived in. And she had created all these sort of rental properties down the back of hers. Was there sewage? Was there, planning? There was nothing.
Yeah, there was no planning.
So there was...
she had chalets and mobile homes.
And was renting them out.
Yeah, and... So at the start of last year, she was ordered to demolish them, and she was warned that if she didn't demolish them, she would be jailed. So I think they have been subsequently demolished, but she had been in breach of a court order at one point, because that had obviously gone through the court system as well.
Yeah.
So she's come before the courts in a kind of constant way, with various things,
and she moves about a lot. I mean, she herself moves to Wexford. She moves to Carlow.
Yeah.
And she also spends time in the UK. I think they had 6 children in total who must all be grown up now.
Yeah. She has spent time in the UK. She has sons over there. Certainly, she has also come before the courts on. She was convicted of 2 charges of failing to make tax returns and 1 count of money laundering in relation to a car which was seized by Gardaí, which was found to be the proceeds of crime. Again, she was sentenced, but I think she only served 10 days in prison because constantly. I mean, if you're a woman, these days, and you're convicted of those sort of offences and you're given those sort of short sentences, I mean, most people are serving days before they're out of prison.
Well, she's no shrinking violet, and she does pose and dress for those photographs she takes every year at the husband's grave. So as he is remembered, a number of people took to Facebook to compliment her.
Yeah.
One saying, "Best looking woman, credit to yourself, up Andy's nan."
Yeah.
She's still called Andy's nan.
She does, yeah. That's she calls herself.
Andy's nan.
Yeah.
And another said, "You look stunning. A lady with a heart of gold. Rest in peace, Andy. Happy heavenly Christmas to you in heaven. Fly high, God's beautiful angel." I am sure many of his victims wouldn't have the same sentiment for him, but nonetheless, he was, and will be loved by his own family.
Absolutely, and always was.
Thanks, Niall.
Thanks, Nicola.